3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, how's it going? It is I, the real Randy Chavez. I am coming at you today with a podcast with Bobby Beebob on Grammy voting, the music industry, crazy stories, and more. Everyone say hello to Dashi. Hello, Dashi.
Hello, Dashi.
Mr. Bobby Beebob, Mr. BB. How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on, and lovely to be on this, podcast. I love the cross continental thing because there's always going to be some fun time zone things to get around, but it makes it fun. We are a global.
It's always great. So, what time is it over there in the great country of Australia?
It's just about noon, but we're in the future, so it's noon on a Thursday.
Oh, very good, very good. Cheers, mate. Well, I don't know if it's
cheers.
Is that some herbal tea you got there?
My herbal tea. It's
my man.
It's a bit too early for the wine yet, but that'll happen hitting into 6 p.m. or 7.
Is that so? The wine is that big over there with the meals? Is it
yeah?
The whiskey? What?
Yeah, I think booze in Australia itself is a very cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
It comes from the Sunday barbecue and the Friday evening pub things, and it's not far off from American culture that way. A lot of social gatherings. There's always some booze involved, and to a greater larger extent. But it's fun.
My man. So yeah, we do that. I mean, I was just watching a TikTok the other day of the difference between Gen Z clubbers and millennial clubbers. And are you a millennial? I feel like you are.
I'm kind of, no, I'm a very older millennial. Actually, I don't know. I don't think I'm actually millennial.
Wait, are you Gen X?
I'm Gen X, yeah.
Oh my god, you look younger than me. What the fudge?
Yeah. I am going to be I will close 50 in a week.
No, wait, really?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's about how old Mr. MC1 thought I was. Like the first time he met me, he's like, "Yeah, Randy, you're my age." And then I was like, "No, I'm not."
No. Mr. MC1 and me have them good genes.
Yeah, oh god, I'm so jealous.
No, but it's good. Having I think I also use way more skincare than any one person should.
Like the what's his name? Christian Bale in not The Machinist, in that movie where he's like, I put this mask on every day. American Psycho? Is that it?
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah, it's pretty much. It's the day cream and the night cream. And I kind of I like to look after myself in all aspects, for the mental, the physical, well-being. I want to age well. I have seen some great examples of aging well, and I've also seen some terrible examples of aging. So you kind of know where you want to be sitting, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. I'd like to kind of still have some capability and, quality of life. Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely seen the people, and it's so weird that there's such a broad spectrum of aging where you have, what's her name? Selma Hayek, who's like 50, and then she looks, oh my God, she's still so freaking beautiful. Julia Moore still looks amazing. And then you have certain people, and I feel like it's a lot of British people. I don't know, maybe they don't drink water. I don't know, but I feel like there's a couple of these, again, a lot of British people, like the actors that just, man, you're younger than I am, and you look even worse than I do. I don't know what it is. Like there's this broad spectrum. And obviously you have like, the creams and lotions, and people drink water and they eat well, but I don't know, man. There's some people that just they kind of don't take that good care of themselves, and then they're just so freaking young.
You got to, and especially I think it's also got to do with a bit of vanity in terms of being in the entertainment industry space. For me at least, and I can only speak from my own kind of perspective, on how this works. I think, your appearance and everything plays such a big part of who you are image-wise, and, it then translates into other things, right? And again, a lot of people, I'm in admiration of those people who, how they look has no bearing on their confidence or anything of those types. I am not one of those people. Like for me to be like, be in an entertainment industry event or something and be active and confident, and I have to know that I look good. And again, it's just a personal thing. I wish I didn't have that, but it is a big part of it. Like, when you have that, look, for me at least, it kind of helps when I'm interacting and confidence and things like that. But I know people who just rock out of bed and they're brilliant, and they're like, they're equally confident in any space. I don't have that. I have to kind of put a lot of effort into things to enjoy. And I think, but that's, I think, from an entertainment industry perspective, I think you do tend to, for the most part, play quite a bit of importance in how you look and things like that, you dress, and it plays a big part.
There's so many ways to do it. So like the stuff that normal people can kind of have access to is the good diet, the exercise. I'm lucky enough where I live in a place that has a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Have you ever tried one of those?
No, I've done the cryo therapy.
Oh, the cryo chamber. How's the cryo chamber? I haven't tried that.
Oh, it's amazing. It invigorates. I mean, it's dropping your body temperature, right? Like, it's aiming to drop your body temperature, right, to below what is normal, and your body is realizing that it's happening and fighting back as part of its default mechanism. So all rushing into your core, and your heart rate's increasing, and the result of that is that it becomes, your all your endorphins are pumping, you're burning calories. Apparently you can burn like 600 to 800 calories just in those few minutes of,
Oh, that's a lot.
But and it's all rushing your blood, endorphins, all, you come out like really kind of exhilarated, and it's a lot of inflammation. It helps with inflammation. It helps with if you've been going to the gym and if you've been training, it kind of helps those muscles kind of recover. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to that. But I'm one of those big fans of all that stuff, man. Like, put me in oxygen chambers, put me in the thing, whatever is going to help me be optimal in terms of wellness. I'll try it. Give me the pill, give me the, I'm on it. Like, I don't care. I use me as the guinea pig.
We got to get you out to Ohio, and you can use it. You can stay here, use the oxygen chamber. It's so cool. There is a part of it because it increases the pressure, and the pressure helps get the oxygen to the muscles and everything. So don't, like, if you have like a sinus infection, it's not good, but it's same thing. Like, I think 45 minutes burns like a couple hundred calories. So you could stay in there for like hours and burn like like 800 calories. It's nuts.
100%, man. It's also, there's also the salt rooms now that they have.
Oh, I haven't heard of those.
They have in Melbourne. So it's blowing a very fine mist of some micromolecular sodium salt thing, which is of course really good for you and it's good for your lungs. And so you're sitting in there and you're breathing this kind of air, and it's on your skin and it's going into your lungs and your system, and apparently that's really good for you as well, because salt, of course, as we know, is kind of the great healer, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's out there, and it's good complementing to the Western medicine kind of approach. You kind of do everything. Just doing that alone isn't going to kind of fix things, but that in combination with other westernized kind of medication and things like that is definitely gonna it makes it better. And like I said, I'm all about that body hacking kind of thing. It's like, I'll try everything. If there's a claim that it's going to make me feel better or look younger or mental well-being or physical well-being, I'll have it. Give it to me.
Same. The sensory deprivation tanks are great. I love those. There's one thing that I haven't tried yet that I think I will eventually. Dr. Rhonda Patrick talks about how when she did an experiment like a decade ago where she took the blood of young rats and injected it into the bodies of older rats, and the older rats started acting younger. So then like the rich like really went and like kind of took it and ran with it. And one of the founders of like PayPal has this, like, he pays them really well, but he has this like farm of like 18-year-olds that have his blood type, and it's just like, just donate your blood, like every like, and each one of them does it. And he essentially like blood dopes with younger people's blood, and supposedly it works really well, because if you flush out the old blood with the newer, younger blood, and again, obviously the same blood type does really well. How much? No, obviously the younger you can stay and appear. Obviously, one, good for health, longevity, but two, good for work and appearances. How much would you? And you don't have to give me any specific numbers, but percentages wise, like if there was something, it could be a magic treatment, and says you could stay exactly as you are right now for 20 years. How much of your net worth would you give up? Like percentage wise, like 10%, 80%?
Ooh, that's a good question. Never thought of that, but I think it comes down to your current situation, right? If you kind of got a good life going on, and you've got the financial freedom, and you've got the stability, and you've got the joy, and you've got the current physical health that you want to maintain, holy crap, you probably go half your net worth, right?
Yeah, if I could say the same, I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
If it was proven and it was a done deal, it was a given. Yeah, you'd go. Yeah, I would. I say that in hypothetical theory. When it came down to actually signing the check, I don't know. I might think about it. But in a hypothetical world, yeah, 100%. Take half my net worth. I'm good.
Yeah. No, there's a show that I watched called Scorpion. I saw a clip of it online, and the comments were like ripping it apart. Like, this is trash. This is horrible. I love it. It's like a bunch of like autistic people that like save the world every episode. It's so good. But maybe it's good because it's just something weird that I like. But this one character is trying to do something where he's like, hey, I'm going to try to upload this person's consciousness into like a data center. And somebody said like, that's like 50 petabytes of information. That's like, like going to be like $50 million. With the recent advances in AI, if they were to go in and do something like that and say like, hey, your vessel is sick, like whatever, in like 20 years, say like your vessel's sick, your mind is good. We can upload your consciousness into this other vessel, into this data center, and you could essentially live forever. Is that something that you'd be like, yeah, I'd love to see kids and grandkids and see how the world shapes? Or do you think that takes away from the preciousness of life because then it doesn't end?
I mean, yeah, look, I think that's quite a broad kind of situation, right? One of the things you think about is consciousness itself and the connection of consciousness, of personal consciousness to the real world. That's kind of what you're talking about, right? Consciousness on its own is one thing. Like, it's me sitting in a room by myself with no sensory feed and just being awake and thinking, right? That's one form of consciousness. But then the consciousness that allows you to perceive and to some extent be part of the real world, that's the golden grail. That's the holy grail, right? Of what people are trying to achieve. And it's the same thing of where you take people's heads and you store them in liquid nitrogen and bring them back to life in the hope that you can bring them back to life 200 years from now when the technology allows us to do so. It's there. I think it's definitely an interesting thing, and we're getting very, very close to it in kind of parallel verticals, aren't we? Like, you look at AI in many ways. Just in the last 2 years itself, the things that you can do at a consumer level with AI, whether it comes to content generation, whether it comes to music generation, whether it comes to tools and things that optimize your life. We didn't have those things in the general public 2 years ago, right? And now nothing surprises me now. Like, you could tell me, yeah, there's an AI that will map, it's a $20 a month subscription to some online platform, and it'll map your consciousness, and you can update it every month. I'll be going, okay, cool. That sounds like it could possibly exist, right? Nothing would surprise me. I wouldn't even question it. You could actually tell me that now and go, yes, here's an AI platform, it's $25 SaaS platform, and here we go, right? Yeah. But that's how the world is now and how it's evolving, and it connects back to what do you mean is real? What is emotion, right? Because you're using a combination of your senses for your brain to kind of assimilate what is real and what is made up. So as long as your brain got the input that something was real, it's real in your mind. It's real, right? So imagine your brain. Everything that happened in your brain and all your memories and consciousness is just sitting on a supercomputer somewhere. and there's a lot of other sensory input devices that allow this consciousness to see what's happening, like what's happening in the world today, what's happening your the 3 generations from now, your descendants can come and have a conversation with a video and audio input to you, and that's real, right?
Yeah.
To your brain, that can be real. It could be still alive. It's like the Matrix. It's like you're basically in a gestation chamber somewhere, but the Matrix puts you into a perceived real world situation where you're interacting with people in the real world and you're doing all those things. That's what the whole point of the Matrix was at the time. And it took me, I think, 30 watches of the Matrix to actually understand that much about it. It's like, as long as the inputs are being fed to your brain, it's real. Right? That's all it is. So you don't have to have a physical body walking around. If your brain's fooled into thinking it's a physical body that's walking around, interacting with people, going to parties, having a drink, singing, being on stage, whatever it might be, if those inputs are properly done, your brain could be sitting in a supercomputer somewhere else anyway, and I'd be happy with that. It's like,
I mean, if that's the reality, then yeah, I've thought about this before, because there's these thing called like brain organoids, and I'm not sure how they make them, but apparently these brain organoids, that they're really smart and they can do a lot of computational stuff. And obviously they're not like Willow, they're not like these giant supercomputers, but a bunch of them together can do a lot of calculations, and the processing's really quick. I guess with AI it's all binary, but with organic brain organoids it's more analog. And the efficiency of them is like they can do a lot of stuff. So these scientists have said, like, hey, this is super efficient. You don't have to waste all this electricity, and we can rent this out. But when they're not being rented out, they're in this state of where they think that they're telling these brain organoids, you're a butterfly and you're in this little, and that creeps me out, because like, is that what we are? I mean, there's a bunch of these glitches in the Matrix. There's a bunch of these like how does music come to you? Like apparently the song Yesterday came to Paul McCartney in a dream.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Like there's no way. There's no way.
Like if I knew I'd be Paul McCartney, I think it's one of those things where you can go into that existential plane thought process and start thinking about things like that. But I don't think we can actually fathom that thing. It's too much for our brain. It's like trying to calculate the size of the universe and those distances. It's just beyond the fathom, because our perception of time and units of measurement are so minute compared to the grand scale of things. It's not possible, and people could go insane trying to figure out that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think with music, taking music as an example, it's how your brain is processing information. Like, let's look at Yesterday. You brought up Yesterday, right?
Yes. Love
you
that
brought
song.
up Yesterday. So Paul McCartney is a talented songwriter. Paul McCartney is a talented musician, right? He's been doing it since he was a child, and all that information and all those possibilities and permutations and combinations of musical composition are floating around in his head, right? It's just there. Now, consciously, he may not be able to access all of that, but it's there. The information is all there. So it's quite likely that, when you go to sleep, your brain can then go, oh, here's a whole bunch of information that hasn't been accessed before. I wonder what we could do with this, and put it together in some kind of form. And whether, in his instance, it's taken on a melodic form, right? And it's gone, here's a combination of notes and lyrics that I'm going to push strongly enough into your consciousness that you remember it when you wake up. Right? It's just your brain's doing its dump of information, or it's moving information around to, do some housekeeping, and it's done this thing. And he's woken up and gone, that's interesting. And I know he went and asked people, and he said, what's the song? And, he went to John Lennon and he said, have you heard the song before? He's like, no. And then, okay, it must be mine. Right? That's happened to me as well. That's happened to me. So I woke up with
Which song? You got to tell me
melody in my head, and I went, oh, that's crazy. And I didn't actually made the mistake of not actually putting it down into like a memo straight away, because you wake up and in 5 minutes it's gone. I didn't do that, and I went, damn it, I didn't do that. But then the next day or 2 days after, I had exactly the same melody come back into my head, which was bizarre. And this time I actually kind of, made a note of it, and it's actually in a song now that's kind of working. So I completely understand how that would work. You're just channeling. There's so much of the information in your head, if it's the thing you're interested in, that your brain's got to process it and housekeep it and move it around, and who knows what's happening as part of that process. You dream a song, and people say, oh, the universe gave it to me, and yeah, that's kind of how I interpret that. People say, Michael Jackson always used to say, I'm not a songwriter, it's already been done, the song's already there, right? And I'm just now have opened my receptors enough that I've been able to receive that information from the universe and then articulate it my way. So he never ever credited himself as being a songwriter in interviews. He always said, no, it's not my work, it's coming from the universe. I'm just fortunate enough to be able to receive that signal and pass it on to you. That's so people have different ways of of assimilating information and kind of bringing information up. And it's a lot of people have that. Like, a lot of people probably get those signals from their brain. They just aren't, they don't have the tools or the techniques or the expertise required to take those thoughts and then translate it into something else, like a song or a painting or a lecture or an essay or whatever it might be, or a book. Yeah. They just don't have that tool set to do it. But there's lots of people who probably have melodies floating around in their head. It's not just a songwriter thing. It's the songwriters are the ones who are able to take that information and then create something new with it.
Yeah, there's and it's not just with songwriting, it's with everything. There's a mangaka called Natsuki Takaya. She had written a manga called Fruits Basket, and she just said one day a character, the main character Toru, popped into her head and said hello, and that was it. And I'm just so curious, like, when you're meditating or when like these things happen, like how does that stuff get there? Like, there's obviously when you're dreaming, and tell us about that. What you said that's happened to you. What song or songs have you gotten in dreams that you've worked on?
Yeah, there's a song that I'm writing. I'm kind of in work now. That's going to be on a project that's being released this year called Rain Falls Down. And that it was just a melody. It wasn't even
no lyrics
or anything. It was just so like cool. a melody that went da 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 na 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 da 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 na to you. And when I feel that love has been hiding out.
Like the Tarzan song. Oh, no, Hercules, or Go the Distance.
Something like that. It was, it was like, I'm going to get it. Hang on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got to get this read.
It was basically like, yeah, it was that. Yeah, that was kind of it. And that was it. It was just, and I kept humming, walking around the house going, my wife was, what the hell are you going? It's like, you say, like, no, I've got to put this down somewhere because this thing, I woke up with this thing and I want to put it down before I actually forget it.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and it's all the same chords, right? You were talking about, remember when we were saying, there's 4 chords, right? Yeah. And also there's the 4 chords, right? There's a big theory, but you can write any of the last 40 years of hit songs are basically 4 chords, right?
Yeah.
It's basically.
I've seen those videos, yeah.
And we were even talking about, the Bruno Mars thing, which was. See, there's these 4 chords, right? Right, and there's like, so the song that we were talking about was, so don't you want me like I want you, baby? Don't you need me like I need you now? Sleep tomorrow, but tonight go crazy. All you gotta do is just meet me at the. Just meet me at the. Just meet me at the. Yeah, so it's like, you know,
That was so beautiful.
it's the same chords, right? You can take any song which is, what's you know, like La Bamba, right?
Yeah.
It's the same chords, right? You might play it on different keys, you might play it on different things. So there's a very finite number of musical notes. It's like 12 notes, right? So every song in the world, you know, has been created. Every musical, classical, it doesn't matter what the genre is. So your brain's going to find ways to combine these notes in different ways, right? And the articulation of those ways into an actual finished art piece is how it's created. And it's the same with sculpture. And it's the same clay, it's the same stone, it's the same set of paints. You have that many colors you can create with, right? How do you then create something that is reasonably seems to be unique, right? But it's like country songs, like people say, oh, you know, you can't copyright, because, you know, most country songs have a very similar sounding arrangement. Most pop songs have a, you know, pop's a little bit different. It's kind of a bit all over the place. But you take country, you take rock, and you take rap, and, you know, these genres that are, it's very, there's a lot of stuff. If you take the singing out of, sometimes you wouldn't even know what the song was, right? So, and that's how you know when you're listening to a song, oh, that's a country song, or that's a rap song, or that's a rock song. It's because 70 or 70% of it is common to everything else that you're creating, right? And it's the same with Mr. MC1 is like pushing for music. But yeah, it's the same with that, right? And it's even if you take rock songs, so rock songs could be almost like, you know, again, the same 4 or 5 chords. It's like you could take a Def Leppard song, which is like a big, you know, big rock song from the 80s, and go, when you make love, same thing. Do you look in the mirror? Who do you think of? Does he look like me? I'm playing the same 4 chords as Albertin. Do you tell me lies and say that it's forever? Do you think twice that you see? You know, I don't want to touch you too much, baby. 'Cause making love to you might drive me crazy. Oh, yeah, love fights. You know, it's like, how do you take things that are reasonably common? And that's why sometimes you can come up with something that is very similar, because either deliberately or it's just something that's stuck in your head that you hear, and someone's going to go, hey, that sounds like my song. And that's when all these lawsuits and copyright issues come up, is because you've not made it different enough to be your own, right? And it's going to be the same with painting, and it's going to be the same with, you know, whether you're in the digital world as well, and, you know, digital collectibles and all that kind of thing that you've seen. It's how hard is it, especially in the digital world, to create something that is unique, and is unique enough to have that value, right? That has then commercial value to its creator and to the platform. And I was saying, you know, my good cousin, Mr. MC1, has sent me that link to VeVe, right? And I went on there and had a bit of a play with his, you know, affiliate link, you know, Mr. MC1 hustling over here with his family. You know, but yeah, it's the same thing. Like, you know, we're talking about digital collectibles, why is something have a certain value to it? Okay, it's unique. There's a very limited number of them that exist in the digital space, in the ecosystem of, you know, blockchain and things like that. And how do you, you know, so how do you put a value on that? Is it as much as someone is willing to pay? right? That's really it.
Yeah.
Someone selling a guitar that John Lennon used, and it's like 2 million. It's like that's same wood and string combination I have here. So going into that digital art world, the VeVe world, and everything that's in that ecosystem, right? One of the things that makes VeVe a little bit stand out a bit more is its structure, and it's also its partnerships with the brands that the Marvels and the all those other things. Like that's what gives it that value, right? So it's not like me. If I started something to do with superheroes and put it out, it's going to be a bit limited in its value for a while because it's a new thing and no one knows it. And it's like doing cover songs, right? If me doing Bruno Mars and Rose, I'm going to get a lot more views and a lot more engagement straight away because it's a song that people already are familiar with. It's a brand that people are familiar with. But if I did my own song, I will eventually get that commercial value to it, but it's not going to be instant, right? That's kind of how I like to use the analogy of art versus art and monetization, and because that's a big part of what the world I'm in, right? A big part of the music industry is the commercialization of art, and there is so much conversation around that happening now, especially with AI's involvement in the creative process, right? That was a big thing that was in conversation with the Recording Academy. It has its big advocacy programs now, that I'm part of those conversations, fortunately, that talk about AI and the creation of music, right? And where's that line, right? And now there was a massive thing that happened now where they've declared that it was legally you can't copyright songs that are 100% generated by AI.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think there's been a ruling, or it's at some stage of a ruling in the US right now. And we all know that, once it happens in the US, it's going to then distill down into other countries as well. Because whatever happens in the US and Europe, other countries are looking at. So it has been defined that for a piece of art to be copyrighted, right? When you talk about music, it was specifically with music, there has to have been a certain percentage of human element involved in its production and composition. Otherwise, you can't actually copyright it.
That makes sense.
And that is
on YouTube now too. Like if it's AI, like you can't monetize it. So I think that's like industry wide.
Yeah, or a percentage of. There's a percentage. That's a threshold. Anything above that threshold is you can't, because it's not unique enough. And also what it means is because AI is based on, a lot of content generative AI is based on the fact that it's had learning and content fed into it that's already been created by human beings, right? And that's the big issue of
copyright. I kind of see it as a tool because like AI, yes, it could come up with anything it wants, but it has to be prompted. It's like you were talking before about you wake up from a dream and sometimes you don't get it all down. There's an episode of Gilmore Girls where Zach, a melody pops into his head and he uses, this is like in the early 2000s, so cell phones weren't like ubiquitous yet. He's at Luke's Diner, he calls his house from the phone at Luke's Diner and he records like the melody that's in his head. He's like, He obviously does it much better than I do. And I feel like a lot of this is really just like a tool where back in the day, I think the Doors, they wrote a couple of songs that were on acid. Well, what is acid? Like that's just a tool. And I mean, I guess it goes to the point of like, one, how many amazing songs that are out there that were not written down while we're on acid that we were robbed of. But then two, like, isn't AI just a tool? Like, I mean, like you're the one that's prompting it. So.
Yeah, 100%. And see, that's the thing that I wrote a paper on this that is kind of, basically AI and the myth of human emotion, right? Along those lines. And people say, AI will never replace human emotion, human emotion in a song. The lived experiences and all those things are, when you articulate those things in a song, that's what makes a song in AI. Like, I don't know about that, because let's think about that, right? Okay, you say that. A lot of the best songs that have been written are completely fake scenarios. Those things haven't happened to the songwriters. They've just taken a story and they've articulated a certain way. And even for the person singing it, Um, you know, for for person singing the song, it's like they did not necessarily have lived that experience. And a classic example of that is Michael. Again, I go back to Michael Jackson, and "Who's Loving You" was a song that he sang when he was 9 years old with the Jackson 5. It's a relationship song. He's 9. He's haven't had that thing. The song was written by, another famous Motown artist, Smokey Robinson.
Yeah.
Right. He's just, but the way he performed that song and told the story, you felt that this 9-year-old guy has actually lived this experience. So that's fake human emotion, right? A lot of songs are written about fake scenarios and then it's up to the interpreter of the song to make it convincing. So what's the difference between doing that and using ChatGPT to create situations that then translate into song? And the question and the answer to that, I feel, is the ratio of it, right? I could go to ChatGPT and say, I'd like to write a song about my dad who passed away, right?
Yeah.
I really feel strongly about that, and I'd love to have something that took some of that emotion that I feel about my dad who passed away and put it into song. But I don't want to just sing a song about how I miss my dad and I miss my dad so much and he was this and he did this for me, and that's just, that's like, then it becomes just like a country song. But I want like analogies that compare to what it feels like to having lost a parent, right? So I can go to ChatGPT and say, I want to write a song about this. Give me 10 situations or analogies that could be used to compare to the feeling of you. That's fine. I do that now. And people have done it for ages in songwriting, just using different mechanisms. People have used rhyming dictionaries. Songwriters have used rhyming dictionaries for the past 50 years. I want I want a word that rhymes with cat. I want a word that rhymes with this. And, people have used that anyway. So what's the difference? So ChatGPT came back and said, here's some examples. And, how about the empty chair at the dining table? Right?
Ooh, that's good.
You know what I mean? Where your dad used to sit.
Yeah.
And you sat, and now that you still sit at this table with the remaining people, but that chair is empty. So you use that as the topic of the song to sing about how you miss your dad, as opposed to just saying how you miss your dad. So I was like, that's great. So now I've written a song about that, right? Called The Empty Chair. And but see what I mean though? It's like, yeah, it's a tool. Who's waving the wand, right? Is AI waving the wand, or are you waving the wand as a human being? So it's that ratio of how much of it am I using as an enabler to create the content, and how much am I just relying on it to create by itself? That's the thing.
Yeah.
And then that's where the copyright issue comes into play. It's like, if I'm using AI has contributed to, say, just throw a number there, 30% of my music in terms of lyrical content and in terms of ideas and melodic structures. That could be fine. That could be perceived as fine, because you still had to put 70% of it in and put your own brain and take your own experiences and all this, the way you work as a songwriter to do that, right? So that 30% of AI I used that was actually trained from the works of Paul McCartney and Jim Morrison and, classical writers and poets and things like that from the last 100 to 200 years or 300 years. That's okay, because it would be the same as me having read Shakespeare and then taken the story of Romeo and Juliet and made a song about it like Taylor Swift did.
Yeah.
Right? That's okay. I think so. That's kind of where we're at now. And a big part of what the Recording Academy is doing is running these advocacy programs to make sure creators' rights are enabled when that ratio or threshold is exceeded. Right? I think they're planning to push for royalties on everything. It's like, if you use ChatGPT to even put one word in there, theoretically, that should be tracked, right? But I think that's going a bit too far.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to percentage and ratios, right? If you've used AI to either from a musical perspective or lyrical perspective within a certain percentage of ratio to enable you, and I think that 70-30 split, to me, again, the industry might decide differently.
Yeah.
But to me, that's still a good split. But it's the whole thing of AI cannot replicate human emotion. That's bullshit. It's like, yes, of course you can. Like if I didn't tell you AI had helped me with that situation, you would have been, oh my God, look at this emotional motherfucker. It's like, he's come up with this whole narrative of the empty chair, and he's kind of,
Yeah.
what a beautiful story. And that's a story that would be common to a lot of people. So if you've lost someone in your family who lived with you, these are the things you're going to miss, right? You're going to miss the side of the bed that they slept on. You're going to miss them seeing them in their chair watching television like you did all the time for the past 10, 15, 20, 30 years. You're going to miss them at the dining table. You're going to miss them at events.
Yeah.
So it's not new, but I've accelerated the process of coming to that by using AI to tell me, as opposed to, maybe a month later sitting at the dining table and go, oh, it's just so sad. The guy used to sit here and have dinner with me when I was growing up, and now he's not there. Oh, that could be a song.
Yeah.
Instead of realizing it a month from now, I've just, realized it in 30 seconds using an AI tool to help give me a situation, right? So AI tools are tools. It's, and the whole thing that now that there's this ruling in place that you can't, it doesn't become a proprietary work of art unless you have a certain percentage of human involvement in it. And I'd be very interested to see how that applies to digital collectibles. If the entire digital collectible is created with the prompt and that's all you did, do you then actually own the authorship of it? Right.
The problem is similar. I mean, not exactly one to one, but there's a bunch of people that say, like, let's say, like, for ownership, there are a bunch of these Web3 like purists that'll say, like, well, if I can't self-custody it, like a bank, the bank has my money, but do you really own it unless you can take it out and put it in your mattress? Yeah. It's debatable. And some people say, like, well, if I can't take these files of these NFTs and put it in my MetaMask, do I really own it? And I guess that's similar to these songs that are out there where, let's say, take you gave the example of, hey, even though some of these songs are written by people that don't have experience, like Ja Rule talked about like gangster stuff, and his life was never really like that. Frankie Lyman had this song back in the day with the teenagers called "Why Do Fools Fall in Love," and he wrote that when he was like 10 years old. And like, what does a 10-year-old know about love?
No,
I don't care where the song comes from. If it's something that touches me, and I freaking love that song. And I think a lot of these older artists, like artists that are older now or they're dead now, there's a writer called Proust that used to say, I think it was Proust, one of the best ways to inspire yourself to write is by reading the works of others. And and I do that too, if I ever have writer's block, like I'm writing a comic called daCAT Chronicles. It'll be on VeVe in a few months. And if I ever have these weird writer's blocks, I'll read something else and that'll give me inspiration. So I feel like as long as these new artists, like, because like we could have, somebody can prompt ChatGPT, give me a song in the perspective of Taylor Swift about a potential breakup with Travis Kelce, like write that. And then let's say we use 10% of that. I can interpret that one way and you can interpret that in another way. I'll write a song that nobody will like, and you'll write a song that will get, 8 million views. So I feel like as long as the people that are writing this stuff, I mean, I can get the same information you get as far as like lyrics to a song goes, and you're just going to make it so much better. Just because you're
and then even that's debatable. Like, it comes down to who's connecting with the art, right? Now, just because I have experience doing that doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to come up with something that's better than what you come up with, because yours could be more convincing and yours could be more relatable. And that's what made me, so yours could just be a spoken word thing that you might come up with, just as an example. And you just stood there in front of a mic and you did the spoken word thing. And I spent, 1 month in the studio at a massive amount of expense with some of the amazing musicians trying to create the song based on exactly the same input and the same situation, right? So, but it then comes down to whose audience was able to consume more of it and whose audience is connected to better. That's all it is. That it is, and that's the thing as well with, I love the whole digital collectibles thing, and I've not really kind of gotten too much of that. I am getting to it really now, and that's only because of Mr. MC1 Sanjay there. It's just like you've been pushing me to kind of get into this, and it should naturally interest me because I come from an artistic world. So here's another form of art, right?
Yeah.
And the potential for monetization with those kind of things is what annoys artists, proper artists. It's like, hang on, like, how much work did you do to make that thing that is now you claim it's got this value to it, right? Did you take a month in the studio? It's like, no, it took me a day, right? But what gives it the value as a digital collectible, that more than the song that came from your brain and came from imagination, and you used the inspiration of your dead father, and you spent a month in the studio with, spending $5,000, and what gives that more value? Is it time, or is it, what I mean? It's like, who's to say that? And everyone's going to have their opinion on that. I want the actual Mona Lisa. I don't want a digital collectible version, whatever that might be, of the Mona Lisa, because I want to be, so for someone who's in that world, that's real enough. Having a digital space where your collectibles sit, that's real enough to give it the value. Right? That's a personal human thing. It's not, it's like saying John Lennon's guitar. Why is that worth $1 million? The glove that Michael Jackson used for his Motown moonwalking thing sold for some crazy amount of money, and the piano. You know what I mean? It's like, what gives the thing its value? What makes it real enough for you to articulate a real world money price, where you put in your hand in your pocket and you put a real world money price for a digital comic, right? And those people are all over the world. And this is why I was going to go back to this whole affiliate thing, and that's such a smart way of selling, right? Because it's a trust-based sell. It's a trust-based promotion, right? That's what the whole thing about affiliate marketing is. By me having those affiliate lines into VeVe or anything else, any SaaS platform, right? Someone's already done the work. All I have to do now is tap into the trust that my network has in me, as many hundreds of thousands of followers I have, to send them to this new thing, right? I've not done any of the work in creating this thing. And I've had affiliate links to, a bunch of SaaS platforms when I started using them first, because I said, hey, if I found this platform useful, other people who do what I do are going to find it useful as well. Yeah. So why shouldn't I? And I would tell people about the things I was using anyway. It's like, what's this new thing you're using? Oh, I'm using this new platform that does this, and here's what it's gonna. Like, I tell people about that anyway. So why not monetize that advice, especially if it's not costing them any more than it would anyway, right? So I love that whole model, of piggybacking on an existing thing to monetize what you're doing, and art is, music is going to end up being like that. Right? Music is going to end up being like that. And I think there have been early experiments in doing that. It's like, if I create something purely from AI, or if I create a song, right? And there's got an AI component, or I do it here and I upload it as it sits online as a digital consumable piece. Can I then have versions of that are being commoditized just in a digital NFT kind of world? Just in blockchain, right? And I think there were people who were kind of starting to do more, like someone did an album that was just, only one copy of it existed.
Yeah.
Right? And it was worth like 10 million or something. Like a big band, what was that? I can't remember the name now. They documented the entire, like, not enough to give away the songs, but they created this whole album, and only one copy existed, and one guy bought it, right? Shit. So only he's heard this album. Wow. You know what I mean? So that's taking what I do into your world.
Yeah. So tell me about that. So when you go and so it's been said that you remember who your fourth grade math fourth grade teacher was, and you remember who like won the Super Bowl in 2007. You don't really remember who was in the AFC Championship. When you go and you vote on some of these you're registered as a Grammy voter. You vote for who wins certain Grammys as a recording academy. When you go and vote, how much of it is like, hey, I don't like, for example, Avatar: The Last Airbender was a better show than Legend of Korra,
Yeah.
but I like Legend of Korra better. Like that was just more my speed. Do you go in and say like, hey, even though I like this song from this artist better, this song from this artist deserves to be remembered because of how the time it came out, how it came out, how special it was? What goes into your voting? Like, do you have it towards you? Do you have it towards the benefit of humanity?
Oh yeah, look, there's different ways of approaching it. Look, I'll go back to the Grammys are the only peer awarded award when you compare to the Oscars and the Golden Globes and things. It's by peers. It's by actual people who are in the industry, who are working professionals like myself. There's 12,000 voting members, Recording Academy voting members all over the world. Different ages, genders, demographics, cultural backgrounds, all over the world. Right? And that's how it works. It's a pure democratic process of, it's not based on sales. It's not based on how many streams you had. Oh, bless you. Not based on how many streams you had. It's not based on how many tours you did and how many people came and saw your concert. It's on the art, right? In theory, that's what it's supposed to be, right? I preface that by saying, in theory, that's what it is, right? So anyone can have their music submitted to the Grammys, but you actually have to submit your music. That's the thing that people don't know. It's not like 10 people in a room looking out to see, what are the new songs that are charting, what are the new songs that are coming out, who's, what's Bruno Mars putting out, what's, Chaperone put out, who's the Chaperone person? Okay, that's interesting. She said, that's not how it works. So whether you're Taylor Swift or Beyonce or whoever it might be, you have to submit your music in the eligibility period to the Recording Academy for consideration. You have to do that. You or your management or your team, so whether it's Taylor Swift or me, you have to actually go and say, here's the album, here's the song, I want it in this category. I want to be considered for best, for rock or this or pop or best duo or instrumental or whatever it might be, song of the year. You have to do all that. And the album has to have been out of the song. There's some criteria and has to be out in a certain eligibility period. Right. And then the Recording Academy will have a first stage of filtering where they will look at all the entries, and they're not making any artistic decisions. But what they will do is they'll make sure, first of all, if you put an album in, it has the minimum number of songs, the duration. You can't do an album of like 10 songs that are 30 seconds each. That doesn't, you know what I mean? So they'll do that and they'll make sure it's all good. And they also may move it into a genre they believe it's actually more suitable. Like I might put a record in and say this is a Christian music album and I'm submitting it in that, but the record could just be a whole bunch of explicit content. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like,
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's like, so they have to then go, okay, maybe this actually has to go into rock or rap or it's not really. So they'll do that. They're not making any artistic or or it doesn't sound nice now, and they do all that, and then after that, September, October, I think it is, you have a first round of voting where, voting members like myself, we go in there and it's like the great equalizer. It's a very surreal thing because I did it only for the first time last year. And you log on to your account, like you would your email, and it's like, vote now. Okay, click in. And there's some, information you look at first and tells you what the process is. And it's like, take what you're doing very seriously because what you're doing has the potential to change somebody's life. It's not like you're just doing a survey. It's like when you're Grammy nominated or win or whatever, even if you win or nominated, that is now how you are referred to for the rest of your life. Everywhere you are introduced, you're going to be introduced as Grammy nominated artist or Grammy winning artist for the rest of your life. So it kind of settles you and we go, shit, all right, so this is something I should take really seriously and ethically and do it, do it properly. Right. So you go in there and it's like so, and it's very screws with your head because it's so surreal, right? That you're part of this world now, and you go, there's the big 6 awards, right? The song of the year, album of the year, record of the year, best new artist. Everyone can vote in for those awards, right? But with everything else, you could only pick 4 categories of four genres, and they advise you to pick genres that you are part of and you are familiar with. Like me picking the rap genre would be a waste of time because I don't really listen to a lot of rap music, right?
Yeah.
So like song of the year has like there's like 600 entries. And there's nothing. It's like the great equalizer. There's no like, silver, rose, and gold premium status. No, it's like a spreadsheet. It's, your song, my song, Bruno Mars, Rose, this, my cousin, my auntie. It's just like a list. And here's the name of the artist. Here's the name of the song. Listen to it. That's it. And you're meant to look at it as to answer your other question, your actual question, you're meant to look at it as a piece of art on its own. As a piece of art, does this rank as my top 6 compared to everybody else?
Yeah.
Not because of the name, but of course you're going to be influenced a little bit by who's famous, who you've heard, who's been promoting their music a lot during that period of time. Because realistically, you're not going to be able to listen to all 600, even 15 seconds of all 600. You're not going to be able to listen, because once you finish, you choose your top 6, you're done. You can't add anymore. And it's alphabetical. So if your name starts with AA, you have a better chance of being nominated. Taylor Swift is screwed both ways. It's T and S. It's like you're going to be right down the end, right? So that's how weird it is. And you choose that, and then you don't know how many votes it is. And then in November, they announce the nominees, and the nominees are, you go and see and that's when you realize if you've not been nominated as well, right? And then you can make a big song and dance about it and start planning your trip to the Grammys and all those kind of things. And then in December, at the end of December, there's another voting round where you now go back in. But this time in the category, you're just going to see the nominees, like 6 people, right? And then you pick just one. Okay, I believe out of these 6 or 8 or whatever it is, if you see more than 6, that means there were ties. I believe this is the person that has to win the Grammy, and that's it. And then you never hear anything else. And the next time you hear about it is at the Grammy Awards when they open the cover, and the Grammy goes too.
Yeah.
That's it. Even the CEO and the president, and no one knows who's won. It's all audited. It's all very, very controlled. And that goes back to, saying, oh, my favorite artist had an album out and she was robbed or he was robbed. And, the Grammys didn't give, the Recording Academy didn't give this guy. No, it's got nothing to do with the Recording Academy or anything like that. It's like if your artist put an album out and it didn't get nominated, it doesn't mean it was bad. It doesn't mean it was rigged or fixed or any of those things. It just means that in that category, there were other artists who either promoted their stuff a lot better or that people liked better, because art is a subjective thing. I know people who think the Beatles are overrated. Blasphemy. How dare you?
I've seen that too. Like, where's this come from?
But, I know people who go, ABBA is a dumb group. How can you listen to ABBA? I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like, but I'm just saying. But
Angel Eyes is such a good song. I still
I had the vinyls when I was like 3 years old, right? I grew up listening. But again, that's what art is about. Yeah. Art is subjective, right? And it doesn't mean that you had a bad album. There's no such thing as bad art. It's just, I tell my younger people as well, because I hear young people going, oh, that person is shit. It's like rubbish. I'm like, no, you can't say that, because that person just sold out Wembley. So they're not shit. It's just you don't like it. And that's what you should say. You should never say that song is shit or that song is rubbish or whatever. No, just say, I don't like it. Because someone else does. You can't define something as being good or bad. You can define just how your connection to it, right? And I try, and I'm guilty of that as well. We all are. Oh, that was such a shit album. How the hell did this person make it as an artist? No. Well, they kind of did. It's and more than their family had to like their music for them to be selling out a stadium. You know what I mean? So it's like, you just don't like it, and that's fine, and that's okay. So that's how the Grammys work. It's like, the whole thing with Beyonce and everything else was like, no, like there was enough people who liked her album and her music to vote for it. So be it. I mean, no, okay. With every artist, there might be a lot of people who will just vote. They haven't even listened to the song. Like, if their favorite artist is in the list of submissions, I'm going to just vote for that person because I like that person and I don't care what the song was like. And there's going to be people, and there's also going to be people who go completely the opposite way and go, I am not going to vote for anyone who's famous mainstream. I'm going to vote for the unknowns because I want the light to shine on them. Like, Taylor Swift has enough Grammys. Beyonce has enough Grammys and $1 billion in the bank. So I'm not going to vote for them, regardless of how amazing the song was.
Yeah.
So are you supposed to do that? Possibly not. You're still supposed to give that person a fighting chance. But everyone's got their own thing, and there's rules around it. Like, I can't talk to people about who I voted for, and I can't even tell the people who I voted for that I voted for them. I'm sure people do.
Yeah.
But when they're having a conversation over with the scotch, it's like, hey man, I voted for you. You better vote for me next time because I got a record coming out. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's all that happens. But there are some strict very guidelines about, and you can be pulled up and barred from the Recording Academy if you violate those guidelines.
Oh wow. So that is another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you mentioned A's, and we'll get to Akon in a second. So there's in WWE, it's finally coming out now, but like 15, 20 years ago, there's a guy named Chris Benoit, that fantastic wrestler, brilliant in the ring, and he just happened to do some of the worst things that a human can do in the real world on the outside. I won't go over it, but it's finally starting to come out now that WWE said we have to pretend like this never happened. And unfortunately for some of the other wrestlers that never really did anything wrong, some of their best matches were with him. And I guess that's similar to Diddy, where like, okay, now Diddy's accused of all of this crazy stuff, and how much he did and how much he didn't do, I have no idea. But is for controversy, how much of that are you able to go and ignore, and how much of that are you able to be like, okay, we can't touch this person? Because with Akon back in the day, one of my favorite songs of his was "Sorry, Blame It on Me," and that was after he had that horrendous accusatory thing. And again, I don't know what happened or not. Based on the song, it doesn't seem like he did much wrong. But I think you've worked with Akon in the past. Like, how does controversy affect your vote?
No, look, again, there was some affiliate label at the time that was involved with Akon in some way that I was part of many years ago.
Okay.
So it wasn't a direct relationship. Like, we didn't hang out in the evening or things like that. There was some affiliate connection with the label that I was involved at the time, had a connection to Convict Music and things like that. So, but again, but there's so many of that, right? There's so much of that going on. It's like, hell no, I can't listen to half the music from the 90s because half of those guys are like, it's come out that they've done some bad shit, right? So again, that's a personal thing. It's, can you separate the art from the person, right? And there is no right or wrong answer in my mind. Everyone has the prerogative to not separate or to separate, right? Would you still watch Cosby Show? I don't know, right? Would you still, if you played R. Kelly at a party, would you still let it play, or would you go, oh, that's shit, man, you shouldn't be playing?
He's got some good songs, man. I believe I can fly.
Of course, yeah. Same with Diddy, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. So going back to that, it's like, no, it comes down to your personal ability, first of all, to be able to separate the art from the person, right? Can you do that? Should you do that? Don't know. Like, it's I try not. I don't have the energy to get into that level of thought process. I like but also then that will also depend on the situation you're in, right? Yes, will I crank up Every Bet You Take? I'll Be Missing You. Sorry, not Every Take. I'll Be Missing You in the car if it came on. Would I crank it up? Yeah, possibly. If I was DJing a school formal, would I play that song? Maybe not a good idea. From a being, I'd like to sustain a career, a long and healthy career, and not be cancelled. First of all, or is it even appropriate, right? You know what I mean? So there's like, you could say the same with Michael Jackson. None of those things were proven, right? Do I still listen to Michael Jackson? Fuck yeah, I love Michael Jackson. Is it because I don't believe any of that stuff? Possibly. I don't believe any of that stuff, so I will still listen to it because it's a formative part of my musical upbringing. Is Michael Jackson. There's a poster just here in my studio. If it was actually proven that all that stuff did happen and he did do all those things, or whatever he was accused of, would I still think of him the same way? I don't know. I hope I'm never put in that situation when it comes to people like Michael Jackson, because
Yeah.
I like him and I like his music. You know what I mean? So in fact, that was my connection to the Grammys. The very first Grammys that I watched when I was young in India, growing up in the oldie days. I don't know if it was the first time it was actually broadcast in India, or it was just be the first one of us. It was like 8 years old. It was like the first time, 1984, right?
Oh wow.
Here's this Grammy Awards, right? Yeah, right. Grammy Awards. I was like 8 or something, or 9 years old or something, right? And I have this. That was the Michael Jackson year. That was the Thriller year, right? I have this image that's burnt into my brain of like Michael Jackson and Quincy. Michael Jackson standing with Quincy Jones, and he's got like like 8 Grammys in his hand. I was like, who is this Michael Jackson guy? Like, and that's just amazing. And that image is kind of burnt into my brain, right? So that's what made it even more special when I was actually at the Grammys itself, because I was at the Grammys in February, sitting down in that room, and the person singing the Grammy goes to is like 100 feet away from you, and then 3 seats in front of me is John Legend and the Foo Fighters. Pearl Jam is like 10 rows behind me. It's like it's a bizarre kind of thing going on in your head, and I was trying not to kind of shoot too much of stuff with my phone. I was trying not to experience it through my phone. I was trying to kind of put the phone away and go be in the moment, because look at the room you're in. You've watched this room on television for the past 40 years, right? Or YouTube, whatever. Now you're in that room and these people are having conversations and people are singing. I can hear Sabrina Carpenter singing something to that, just like a way. It's like having conversations, and otherwise you just see what the camera sees, right? Here you're walking around and it's like, oh my God, this is like, so it's very subjective, man. And how your connection to artists are very subjective. All of those things that you're saying with Diddy and R. Kelly, and it has to come down to a personal thing. Like, like, is it so bad that then is it like, is it a situation where it is so horrific that you are now deemed immoral for actually not alienating this person, right? If I still listen to a Diddy song comes up at a party and go, oh, this is a banger, right? Let's use that word in the terms of the context of Diddy. But does it mean like I'm morally now void because I'm choosing to enjoy this? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, man. It's like life's too short to kind of work. Would I pay, like, if I then, when Diddy came out after he did his time, if and then I paid money and went to a concert, maybe that's kind of a bit wrong to me. Again, I have to always preface this, like, to me that would be like, I don't know, that's a bit icky there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not. I'll just
There's
enjoy the music in private in the car, as opposed to kind of going to a concert and like say, let's give them some money. So
they go over that in an episode of Modern Family, where these two guys, Mitch and Cam, who are, they might not have been married at the time. At some point they get married. Anyway, they happen to be gay. And okay, so you know the story. So they happen to be gay, and there's this like not anti-gay. There's this protest where a bunch of the LGBT, I think back in the day it was just LGBT plus community, they were protesting this restaurant because the conglomerate that owned this restaurant, like the CEO had said something anti-gay, and like, hey, we're going to protest this restaurant. But that's like one of their favorite restaurants because they have like the best, like whatever. And they're like,
yeah.
So, and they're like, but they're like strudel, whatever it is like so good. We have so they went there and they're like, oh my God, we can't leave because there's like, we don't want to be bad gays. We want to be like good gays and protest this restaurant, but this restaurant's so good. So I understand, and it's obviously that's not my struggle or anything.
Yeah, that applies to everything. Look, that applies to everything. It's like, how far back are you willing to go, right? I'll give another example. Like all the shit that's happening with Elon Musk and Tesla, and like people driving around. I know someone driving around a Tesla now that has a sticker on the back that says, "I'm sorry, I bought it before I knew he was a dick." He actually has that on his Tesla, right? And he's like, I can bag that person and make fun of him, even if it's lighthearted, and go, hey, come on, man, like, swastika, and you drive a swastika, right? And it's like, but then I can't do that because I drive a Porsche, right? And Ferdinand Porsche made his money making cars for the actual Nazis.
Yeah, same with Volkswagen.
So
Yeah,
I can't stand on that moral high ground to a Tesla owner. It's like, okay, you're buying a car from someone who, is kind of aligning with that. People think that he's aligning with that right-wing Nazi mindset, whether it's true or not. I can't stand on any kind of moral high ground because I'm driving a car that was built by the guy who actually built cars for the Nazis. Like, but
yeah.
does that matter now? It's like, that's the kind of question. Is it, I could go with the thing, oh, look, that was a million years ago. And, the company's evolved and everything. If you go back far enough to any company, there's going to be connections to some shit, right? So I could use that excuse, but really that's just a personal thing. It's like, if I really wanted to have that integrity and that moral high ground, I wouldn't be able to drive that car.
Yeah.
Right. And I couldn't bag people who drive Teslas. It's like, are you dismissing the good that Tesla has done for the automotive community by, giving all its patents away for free, and because the head of the company, or the figurehead of the company looks like he's lost his fucking mind, right? How far are you willing to go with that? And that's the same thing the Modern Family is like, it's the same thing that applies to Modern Family. It's the same thing that applies to platforms you use. Like, should you be using Facebook because of Mark Zuckerberg's, I'm just saying, it's like, it's like, how far back are you willing to go? How wide are you willing to go in your current situation?
Yeah.
Like anything. Like, should I be using my iPhone because there are claims that it's made using slave labor in Asia? You know what I mean? It's like,
that's so hard because there's one on the aspect. So I like Elon because of the way that he is transitioning the world to sustainable energy. Happens that I think,
good stuff. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But then there's that other side of it that is, like, holy shit, dude. Like, dial it back, like, 2 notches. You're making me hard for me to like you, and kind of, like, dial it back just under the threshold so I can still claim I admire you. You know what I mean? It's like,
so like there's that aspect where also like certain things are like funny. Like I saw this video the other day. So I have friends on the left. I have friends beautiful friends that are gay, but I also was in the military, so I love guns, but I love drugs, but I like other things. Like
all those things can coexist.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. So
why is one have to kind of cut the other one out?
Yeah.
Right? Why does that have to happen? You can be a gun-loving dude who's also gay, or you can be a gun-loving dude who also believes that women should have their rights. It's like there's no exclusiveness to one excluding the others.
Yeah.
That's dumb. I think that's quite dumb. It's like, you're limiting yourself with that mindset as well, right? It's like, should you have a gay pastor? Is that completely an oxymoron? No, because why are those two things unique? Or someone who is doing great for society and has a great message and brings people together, what's the sexuality got to do with it? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So I get what you mean in terms of, like, I'm that person as well. Like, I am fascinated being North American and not having access to guns. You see both sides, right? Yes, all the shit that happens in schools is horrific. It's like, yes, there should be some kind of balancing structure and kind of process behind it. I shouldn't just be able to walk in and walk out with that kind of thing from Walmart. But I'm fascinated by, and would I go to a gun range if I was in that part of town? Like, I have relatives who live in Texas, right? That is yeehaw gun country, right? Let's not be a dirty bones about that, right? I have cousins who live in Dallas, right? So, and that's part of the culture, right? So would I go to a gun range and experiment with a whole bunch of firearms? Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that when I visit, to just go. But I'm also against having people who have fucking mental issues walk in and buy a semi-automatic weapon.
I think all of us do. I think any sensible person has that Reservation.
And dial it back. Like put some checks and balances into it. No one's telling you to not go and buy a gun, right? It's got its place for certain things, but also, you need a license to drive a car on the road. You know what I mean? That's far less lethal. You know what I mean? That's my kind of point of view on that whole thing. And I get what you mean. It's like you could have all of those things. You can like all of those things non-exclusively. And I hijacked your narrative a little bit there, but
no, that's good.
that's kind of where I was kind of jumping on. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. It's the world is complex, man. The world is so multidimensional. Human beings are complex things. Life is complex. It's like we can't distill things down into black and white. You can't do that. It's impossible to do it in any aspect. There's always a big section of black and white is in fact a very narrow extremist edge. Most of it is gray area. Most of life and is gray area.
It's like that Pokemon song. It's not always black and white. Sometimes there's stuff in the middle. There's
right.
My friend Julie. So there's two examples. My friend Julie, she was a political commentator back in the day, and she wrote this amazing article on. She went to this thing called Pork Fest. It's called the Porcupine Freedom Festival for like libertarians, and she's like, I was scared of guns. And now, like, I love guns because I actually held one and shot one, and it was cool. And there's this episode of BoJack Horseman where this one, like, super liberal character named Diane, she's like, oh, I don't believe in guns. But then she's with a friend that a man goes to, like, he was a little aggressive. He wasn't, like, going around, like, groping, but he was a little aggressive. And he got to the point where this woman got like a gun out of her purse, and she's like, "I will fucking kill you." And the guy's like, "Well," so this liberal girl like Diana, she's like, "That was wild." She's like, "I don't really believe in guns, but that was cool." And she goes to a gun range, and she's a writer, and she's just like, "If you're a man, you're not gonna get it because like you feel safe like all the time, but like as a woman, I never feel safe. But when I have a gun, I feel ultra safe. I feel like I can take on anybody." And it's like, I feel like Apollo Creed, where, look, man, whatever gets them in the ring, like whatever gets people on the pro gun side, I'm game. Let all the women have guns. Let everyone have guns.
100%. I get what you mean. It's difficult for us as men to be in that, to understand that mindset of the women being unsafe, right? We have women in our lives. We all do, and it's hard to understand a simple thing like walking home late at night. Our mindset versus their mindset. I'm very rarely looking behind my shoulder. I will if I'm in a strange neighborhood, but for the most part, I'm not. I'm just like, I'm just kind of, I mean, I don't do a lot of walking home. Let me preface that, but but I you know what I mean though. Like even if it's a shopping mall or whether it's somewhere or walking out of a shopping mall into the car in the car park, right? I've had women who I know go, "That's a fucking scary thing for us." Like I was like, really? Like the cars, you can see the car. He's like, yeah, but the distance between you and the car, I've got my keys out and I'm holding it like ready to whack somebody in the face if I suspect that they're coming to me. I was like, I have never even thought of that. Like, you know what I mean? Like someone could grab my bag, like my purse. I'm like, okay, I don't, because I have a wallet that's in my pocket. I don't even, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I get the thing with the women and the guns thing. Like, yes, I mean, let's not put on the fact that, by the time, if you didn't really know how to use a gun, you'd be killed before you even got the gun out of your purse. But at least the perception of safety, like, that you have a little bit more power to defend yourself. Yeah, of course. I think that's, and if that empowers you as someone who feels threatened, 100%, right? Like I said, the gun thing is such a divisive thing, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, because no one, see, for politicians, it doesn't work for them to keep people playing in the gray area. It doesn't work for them. They have to push people on either side.
Yeah.
The gray area means you are an undecided voter, right?
Agreed.
So you're only going to get your tribe by pushing people using whatever narrative you might push into one of the two extremes, either massively pro-gun or complete, I don't care what it's for. Even the army shouldn't have gun. You know what I mean? It's like whichever side you're going to be pushed into, and it doesn't serve politicians or people in power well to have people in the gray area. Whereas most people live in the gray area. You're in that gray area now. You're talking about it, the fact that you can still be a gun owner, but still believe in rights.
Yeah.
But for me, who's not having this conversation with you, right? If I didn't know you or had a conversation with you and I knew that we were a massive pro-gun person, I would automatically assume you're a hardcore Republican who is like completely stands for everything that Donald Trump stands for. You know what I mean? But that's because of the narrative I've been fed about how people sit in the spectrums.
Yeah.
It's not, but that's not the way it is. Like I said, I know people who live in very, very red states in America and very, very, Bible Belt states, but they're perfectly fine, normal people. It's like we get along very well. They're some of my
Yeah.
best, closest relatives, and that's just the way the world is, and this, we can argue for the next 2 hours about it or discuss it for the next 2 hours, but we're not, and I hope we change people's minds about that. That's why I like talking about things like this. It's like people are very multidimensional. It's not black or white at all. So you actually have to meet these people and talk to them, and start with, because for every 2 things you don't have in common, you got 10 things you do have in common. That's how the world is. We're all genetically 99.999% the same. You know what I mean? And the good thing about being in the art world is, music world, is you kind of realize that all the time. Like when I was in LA at the Grammys, it's just everyone there's from so many different backgrounds and cultures, but you walk into that hotel foyer where everyone was staying, and I was staying in the Biltmore, which is like a lot of Grammy people were in that hotel in LA. You come down into the foyer, it's like, oh wow, it's like everyone's with, you can see them in Recording Academy, like, this jacket, or, like pins, and, it's like, wow, these are all like, and everyone's from all over the world, everyone's from all over the US, doesn't matter what, and you're just there for the same thing. You're there to mix with your people and your music people and your Grammy people, and, build friendships and strengthen friendships. And that's the way most of the world actually works in the real world. Like, if you're not seeing it through the lens of a, Twitter narrative or television media narrative, that's how the world actually works for the most part. Not, most people aren't dicks. Most people are quite happy to coexist with other
people. Even like you could be like middle right and middle left, and you're probably mostly the same. Like there's a quote from Pokemon the first movie where Meowth says, "We share the same earth, the same air, and the same sky. And maybe if we start looking at what's the same instead of what's different, well, who knows?" And I think one of the things that unites us is just our infatuation with, I don't want to say the 1%, but like the rock stars, the movie stars, the people like you who. So tell us, like, you've worked with like a video with you and like Lenny Kravitz. Like, tell us about either how real people are even when they get to that level, or how crazy people are at some of these parties, because we are dying to hear it. We want to know.
Look, there are both, right? I haven't been, like, I've been in conversations with people who are at the pointy end, right? People who are songwriters like Diane Warren. Diane Warren is one of the most amazing songwriters on the planet. She's, hit songs from the past 30 years have been written by Diane Warren. Like If I Could Turn Back Time is Diane Warren, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, Can't Fight the Moonlight, Leanne Rimes, like, Don't Want to Miss a Thing, Aerosmith. It's like she gave Aerosmith the first #1. But when you're talking to people in a conversation, like in DMs and things like that, which I was fortunate enough to do with her, she's just like, you're like, oh, you're like a normal person. It's like you've had like 30 #1 singles and 10 Grammys, and she's also nominated for 16 times for an Oscar. 16 times. She has 16 Oscar nominees, right? But she's quite a normal person. right? Perfectly normal, likes cats, swears like a sailor on all the social media. And there's that, right? And most people, I think, when you get to know them, are that. So when I was at the Grammys as well, talking to people and who are nominated for Grammys, and then who eventually actually won Grammys at the Grammy Awards, um, it's in that room. I think it's a perception as well. When you're in the room and you're all in that part of that same world, for the most part, it's all very just normal, and you're just hanging out and you're talking to people, and they talk about things that they may not say in a public forum, right? Because it's not an open. The Grammys is not like an open event; it's by
Yeah.
invitation. But I think there's the when they're in a general public situation, there's a different persona and there's a different wall that they create, either to maintain the persona or because there's a trust thing. I can't say anything I want here because I don't know who's filming or who's recording with their phone,
Yeah.
right? So people are much more relaxed in a closed circuit environment like the Grammys, like the Grammy events itself, the award ceremony, right? And in um, the after parties and things like that. So I was at the first ceremony. There's a 12:30. There's a ceremony first that happens. There's an award ceremony where about 70 awards are given. So I was standing right in front of the stage and chilling before the event actually started. And my business partner was with me and said, bang me and said, "Hey, isn't that Lee's Clark? It's like Phil Collins' bass player, like the guy with the long white beard. Who's, you see him in all Phil Collins' stuff and Toto." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Should we go and say hi?" And he's like, I don't want to be that person. Like, like, but I said, hang on, everyone here is like part of the recording academy. He's just another person that's like, so we went up to him and like, "Hey man, we love your stuff and stuff." And he was like, "Oh, nice to meet you. Where are you guys from?" "Oh, I'm from Australia." He's from India. Just here for the first time. He's like, "Oh man, I'm in the house band. I just want to go have a piss, you know. But you know what I mean? So like, oh, there's that. And then other artists. So yeah, I think in amongst friends or amongst people who are like in that same ecosystem, everyone I've met is very down to earth. Everyone's very friendly. There's no tall poppy syndrome. There's no gatekeeping. It's like, "Oh, come in here. Okay, I want you to come. I want you to meet these people. Come and meet these people." And you're like, here's this one who works with Beyonce, and here's this guy who works with, you know, Timberland, and da 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 da. And here's the studio, and so I think that's a different kind of vibe, and I loved it. There was no kind of like, "No, we've got our network and you haven't earned your way into this network yet." Now, if you're in that room, you've earned your right to be in that world. If you're in that award room, or if you're in kind of, at the after parties. And then it was like, yeah, so I didn't have anything planned when I went down. I just had, like, I knew I was going to be at the Grammys itself and one kind of pre-event thing. But the moment you go to these things, everyone's really friendly. Everyone's like, there's no egos, there's no like, or at least the people I met didn't have that.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, "Oh," and when they met you, like, "Oh, we're having this other thing tomorrow. You should come to that as well." And then you go there. Someone else sees you go, "Oh, we're having this thing for dinner. You should come there as well and meet these other people." And like everyone's like, "Oh, you come all the way from Australia?" I was like, "Oh, cool, yeah. So let's come. Welcome to our world." And I met Stephen Slate. Stephen Slate is the audio tech guru. He's got a cult icon in the audio tech world. He's built, software emulations of very expensive hardware equipment that, thousands of studio producers now use to replace what would have been a very expensive rack of analog equipment, plugins and this and that. He's built that thing, and the microphone I have behind me, the headphones I use, they're all Stephen Slate. He's got his name on the company, right? So he lives in LA, Hollywood Hills, all that whole thing. Just messaged him and say, "Hey, we should catch up." He's like, "Hey, come down, you should." And it's like, should I go to the office? And then the guy said, "No, like, no, Stephen wants you to come to his house." I'm like, okay, so it's like, oh, he's just like a normal guy. I mean, he's got a fuck ton more money than I have, but that doesn't but he's just a normal guy who now has a massive net worth, and has a reputation. He's built these amazing companies.
I love that
For
with
the
people.
for the most part, they're all the same, man. They're like, there's no crazy story about, someone who was a diva or any of those things. It was nothing. It was just like, if you look at the Grammys, you can see, Taylor Swift is talking to Sabrina Carpenter, and they're just having a conversation about, I don't know, what the cake tastes like, or some boring thing. It's like, do you see which wine are you having? It's like, okay, it's like, just normal people who are put into extraordinary circumstances,
Yeah.
right? But then they have to maintain a certain persona and a certain kind of shininess that comes as part of the job. You have to maintain that to a greater large extent. Some don't. Like Dave Grohl, like you see him, he's just like, hey man, he's got the dirty black t-shirt on, he drives a van. It's
I
like,
love him so much.
he's like, do you know who you are? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, but he's like, I mean, he knows, don't get me wrong. Like he knows he's Dave Grohl, right? That's like Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney knows he's fucking Paul McCartney when he walks into a room. But that's not how they behave. In fact, it's because he knows he's Dave Grohl, and because Paul McCartney knows he's Paul McCartney, they will actually dial it down and like to make you feel comfortable because they know what you're feeling being in the conversation with them. Paul McCartney knows that when you're having a conversation with him, he knows what's happening in your head. He's known that for the past 70 years of his career. You're overwhelmed, you're in awe, you're kind of finding it hard to relate to him as a normal person. He knows all these things. So he will actually dial it down and go, hey man, how are you? What's been happening with your day today? And he's like, anyone who's had a conversation with Paul McCartney will say exactly the same thing. It's like talking to a normal guy. And it's only when I walk away, I go, holy shit, I just spoke to Paul McCartney. Like, and big artists say this. Like I remember Nuno Bettencourt, who's like the guitarist of Extreme, going, oh my God, I just had a conversation with Paul McCartney. It's like, dude, you wrote more than words. You know what I mean? It's like even they are starstruck with certain people. Like it's the same thing with Taylor Swift. It's like, celebrities are starstruck. Other celebrities are like, oh my God, in the glow, the golden glow that is, Taylor Swift. Even big Hollywood stars go, holy crap, that is incredible. So it's just levels. It's just different levels to all of those things. And I think the more you hang out with these people, the more you realize that they're just very normal people who are in extraordinary circumstances. That's all it is. I wish I had some scandalous stories to tell you, but
That's all good.
There really wasn't a lot of that. It was, let's see, keep, watch this space. As I start hanging out with more of them, I'm sure I'm going to find,
of course,
some really, and then I'll be on your WhatsApp going, hey, Randy, we got to get another episode of
Dude,
the show.
Whenever you want. So right now it's about to be Justin Timberlake season. And what I mean by that is there'll be like these memes of these poems, be like roses are red, skies are gray, and in a few weeks, it's gonna be May.
It's gonna be May, yeah.
So
we're getting to that, yeah.
There's this one meme that came on where I guess he got arrested like last year for something. He was like doing it while on tour.
The DUI. It was like a DUI.
Yeah. He partied too hard, and the meme was just like Justin Timberlake getting arrested, and he's like, "You're gonna ruin the tour," and the cop was like, "What tour?" Just like the world tour, and just those memes. Like I love him so much.
I love him. I love
the memes.
I know the guy who used to drum with him, Brian Fisher-Moore, cool. Massive, like Tennessee Kids, big drummer. But he used to tell me the guy's he's like a muso. He will just come in and like hang with the band and jam, bring his guitar out, and he's just really a fun guy to be around. He loves being around musicians. He loves being around people in the industry. That's his world. That's his comfort place, right? He's uncomfortable in a normal outdoor situation when he's like in, talking to normal people, but in a musician situation, that's home. And I found that with most people, it's like I'm like that. Like most of my close friends are all people who are creative in some way or in the industry. They're singers, they're songwriters, they're producers, they're musicians. Those are my people. Like, excuse me, that's when I'm going to be the most comfortable and hang. And, I could be there for 3 hours having a conversation. Like, look at the time you spent. It's like, the time doesn't matter. The eyes wide shut kind of parties. I've never been to those parties yet, but when I am, I will kind of let you know.
You'll come
I'll FaceTime you.
Okay. I'd love to. If you want me to keep those private, that's fine. But we'd love to get you on the podcast. But again, whatever you want, whatever you wish.
No. I'm happy. I don't care. But like I said, I've not been in those kind of situations. But I'm not yet there. I'm getting there slowly to get into those kind of rooms, But I'm not in the inner circle yet. But when I'm there, we'll let you know.
Cool beans. So we go at about 90-ish minutes. Before we end it, and I'll talk to you off camera for a little bit, but what do you want to say to the 300 people that are here, to the thousands that'll watch this after it's uploaded? What do you want to, what's your message?
Oh, look, I think, from a personal perspective, it's been great having you here. So, please follow me on all my social platforms, Bobby Beebob and everything. I'd love to have you on as part of that conversation. But I think, from just a message, it's just going back to what we spoke about earlier. Like, the world is gray. The world is a big gray area. People are trying to divide us. People are trying to divide us for their own gain, because the only way those people can achieve anything or stay in power or do what they want to do is by pitting us against each other. We have more in common than we have differences, I think. And meet people. Go out of your comfort zone into situations where you're going to meet people from different walks of life. Don't stay within the same kind of, the 10 people, who are all of your own cultural ethnicity or your own mindset. Go into situations that are going to put you in situations where you meet people of different cultures, of different ages, of different mindsets. Like, I love, teaching and mentoring for the Recording Academy, because I meet people who are like 21, and you go, oh, wow, look at this young adult and how they think. It's amazing. You get their perspective of the world as just today and their opinion. And, I like hanging out with my nieces and nephews who are anywhere between the ages of 12 to 17, because it's like, look at how they see the world. It's so different, right, from how we see the world. But you have to do that. Otherwise, that's the view of the world you're going to have for the rest of your life, which sucks, because that's not the world we live in.
Agreed. I understand. Thank you so much for coming on. This was great. You're so awesome. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being so cool.
We could be talking for the next 2 hours, but
we could be talking but I have to pee. My dog has to eat, and then an article just dropped on VeVe, so I have to go over that. But we'll talk off camera for a minute. To hear you from your message. Yeah, everyone here loves you. Everyone say bye-bye to Dashi. Bye-bye, Dashi. This is great. Don't you want me?